Remote viewing US presidents meeting with extraterrestrials and secret agreements. One of the least understood processes in the modern history of UFOs are secret meetings held between US presidents and extraterrestrial visitors, and subsequent agreements that have emerged from them. A number of insiders and eyewitnesses have come forward over the years to share their knowledge of these highly classified events, which continue to remain secret to this day and are hotly disputed among UFO researchers. To this body of testimonial evidence that such meetings and agreements did occur, we can now add recent remote viewing sessions conducted by the Farsight Institute using a scientifically rigorous protocol. The data provided by Farsight gives us an independent means of evaluating the earlier body of testimonies concerning US presidents meeting with and striking deals with extraterrestrials. Before discussing the recent Farsight remote viewing sessions on presidential meetings with extraterrestrials, I need to explain what was already known from multiple sources about such meetings. The first references to US presidents meeting with extraterrestrials came from a letter dated April 16, 1954, that was written by a highly respected metaphysical leader, Gerald Light, less than 2 months after President Eisenhower reportedly met with an extraterrestrial delegation at Edwards Air Force Base. Light's letter described his first-hand account of the meeting and the events that transpired after a delegation of human-looking extraterrestrials arrived in a flying saucer craft. Light described expectations that the public would be told the truth by the Eisenhower administration, but a high-level cover-up was implemented instead. Unfortunately, there was no independent corroboration of the momentous meeting that Light says he witnessed. Consequently, Light's account was quickly dismissed, ridiculed, and forgotten by the general public. Over the subsequent decades, anonymous whistleblowers would occasionally come forward to be interviewed by an intrepid journalist or brave UFO researchers such as Timothy Good, who included the information in their newspaper articles or books. Good's 1991 book, Alien Contact, was among the first to release details of the Eisenhower extraterrestrial meeting. Very few individuals were willing to go on the record and face the scrutiny, ridicule, and risks associated with going public on such a highly classified topic. Also in 1991, a former top-level US Navy intelligence briefer, William Cooper, released his highly controversial book, Behold a Pale Horse, where he revealed some of the contents of official files he witnessed describing President Eisenhower meeting with different delegations of extraterrestrials at Edwards Air Force Base and other locations in the 1954 to 55 time period. Cooper said that the first delegation failed to reach an agreement with Eisenhower's administration, but warned him of a second extraterrestrial group that would soon make contact. Eisenhower was told this latter group would be more willing to reach an agreement, but proved to be treacherous and take the planet down a very dark path. Cooper said an agreement was eventually reached that permitted a limited number of alien abductions, but these increased exponentially as a result of the permission being given. Beginning in 2007, first-hand testimony emerged from a number of witnesses that had been present at Holloman Air Force Base in February 1955, showing conclusively for the first time that a second meeting had indeed occurred. UFO researcher Art Campbell collected a number of these insider accounts of what transpired, along with documents corroborating their testimonies. In short, President Eisenhower was seen entering into a flying saucer that had landed, but few details emerged about what was discussed and the occupants of the craft. With the remote viewing data recently provided by Dr. Courtney Brown and his team of remote viewers, an independent means of corroborating such insider accounts is now available for the first time. Furthermore, a rare glimpse is provided into these highly classified meetings between US presidents and extraterrestrials and what was agreed to. As explained in my previous article on the Farsight Institute's remote viewing protocols, all sessions are conducted under blind conditions. The remote viewer is simply told to view a target, for example, target X, without being given any details. Only the individual setting up the sessions, Dr. Brown, is aware of the target. Here are the 2 targets that were given to the 5 remote viewers that participated in the sessions. Quote, Target 1, the first meeting between a US president and extraterrestrials from the Galactic Federation of Worlds during the 20th century. Target 2, Part A, the highest level meeting between a US president and or his representatives and reptilian extraterrestrials and or their representatives during the 20th century. Part B, the first meeting between a US president and or his representatives and extraterrestrials from the Orion system during the 20th century. End quote. While there were significant differences among the remote viewers about particular details of the scenes they were witnessing, the broad picture they described had remarkable coherence. This is one of the stunning aspects of multiple remote viewing sessions of blind targets by highly trained and competent remote viewers. It is easy to understand why the US intelligence community has used remote viewing for decades to complement intelligence gathered by other traditional sources, human, electronic, photographic, etc. In the case of targets 1 and 2, the remote viewers were able to independently confirm that high-level human representatives, the Eisenhower administration, met with different groups of extraterrestrials that arrived in spacecraft to remote locations where meetings took place. The extraterrestrials came from competing alliances. Some were human-looking, the Galactic Federation of Worlds, while others were reptilians, the Draco Empire, or allied with them, the Orion Collective. Some of the negotiations went badly, for example the Galactic Federation, while others led to deals being struck, the Draco and Orion Collectives. The successful extraterrestrial groups gave technologies in exchange for human genetics or being allowed to establish bases on Earth. The human leader Eisenhower eventually felt great regret for giving away something valuable, humans, for what he recognized as technology trinkets. On the other hand, the extraterrestrials who secured an agreement, the Draco and Orion Collectives, felt they had achieved a significant victory over their enemies, the Galactic Federation. This suggested that the human side, the US, was negotiating from a position of weakness, since they did not view any of the different extraterrestrial groups as enemies, but as neutral bidders in a negotiation. In contrast, the reptilian-allied extraterrestrials saw the Earth-human side as naive natural enemies to be manipulated and exploited while feigning technological support. After watching the remote viewers' observations, it needs to be appreciated they spoke in general terms about human and non-human subjects, meetings and interacting in different locations, without naming specific groups or locations. It is only when Dr. Brown analyzes their data in relation to the 2 targets he had set for the sessions that a clearer picture emerges of what had happened. Here's how Dr. Brown summarized the remote viewing data. Quote, "You see, there was a meeting, not just one meeting, but a few meetings. The meetings were between various extraterrestrial groups and one or more US presidents and their representatives. The ETs were not all of one mind. They all wanted something. Some seemed to want to warn humanity not to strike a deal with other ET groups. Everyone wanted an alliance of some sort, but US leadership also wanted something, stuff. Indeed, human leadership seemed desperate to strike a deal, and that desperation led to a deal that many now regret profoundly. This is one of the reasons for the continued secrecy. The deal was so bad that current human leadership is afraid to talk about it. So from the ET side and the human leadership side, the silence continues." End quote. What is remarkable here is that the remote viewing data corroborates much of what insiders have been revealing about secret meetings between the Eisenhower administration and extraterrestrials dating from 1954. The initial meetings with representatives from the Galactic Federation did not result in agreements, but subsequent discussions with the Reptilian and Orion alliances did. The warnings from the first group of extraterrestrials, the Galactic Federation, were disregarded, and the agreements reached with the second group, the Draco and Orion Alliance, came to be regretted by President Eisenhower. It is known that President Eisenhower was very unhappy with the way the extraterrestrial issue was being managed by the Majestic 12 group, MJ-12. While President Truman had created MJ-12 in September 1947, Eisenhower gave it much more power following the recommendations of national security advisors such as Nelson Rockefeller. Eisenhower expressed his disappointment privately to trusted military aides and even threatened to invade Area 51's S4 facility, where extraterrestrial technologies were being stored and studied by MJ-12 personnel. Advanced extraterrestrial technologies were being reverse engineered with limited success, as confirmed by Bob Lazar in 1989. Meanwhile, increasing numbers of people were being abducted by aliens and subjected to genetic experiments. Eisenhower's realization that the deal with the extraterrestrials was a bad one led to his famous farewell address about the dangers of the military-industrial complex and warning President Kennedy about the MJ-12 group. Nevertheless, the agreements persist to this day, as evidenced by Dan Sherman, a former US Air Force electronic communications expert from 1982 to 1994, who, in 1998, revealed in his book, Above Black, Project Preserved Destiny, that the NSA had trained him to communicate with grey extraterrestrials who reported on the abductions they were performing. When Sherman realized that there was a secret agreement between extraterrestrials and the US government that permitted abductions, he decided to resign and left the Air Force in disgust. The agreements go far beyond merely allowing human subjects to be abducted for genetic experiments. According to multiple insider reports, the agreements also extend to soldiers being sent on missions to battle against reptilian extraterrestrials with little chance of success, and millions disappearing annually into a slave trade that involves individuals being sent into remote deep underground bases, DUMBs, or off-planet locations, the Moon and Mars, with no prospect of return. All this makes it easier to appreciate Dr. Brown's conclusion that human political leaders are afraid to reveal the different agreements reached with extraterrestrials. The public reaction to learning the truth would be utter disgust and an immediate demand to terminate such agreements. The anticipated public response is very high among the factors that perpetuate the secrecy system that still remains in place decades after the initial agreements were first reached and periodically renewed in total secrecy, without the public learning anything about the agreements and their hidden provisions. Dr. Brown's remote viewing sessions on presidential meetings with extraterrestrials provide a valuable corroborating source of evidence that such meetings did in fact occur and have resulted in agreements with manipulative extraterrestrial groups that continue to plague humanity's evolution and development. In the meantime, the extraterrestrial group, the Galactic Federation, that was spurned by US officials in the 1950s, has been quietly waiting for the day that the earlier oppressive agreements would be publicly exposed and be replaced by more equitable arrangements. As humanity undergoes its great awakening and learns of the many dark activities of the deep state and its allies, it will be important to include full disclosure of these secret agreements. Most critically, we need to befriend the Galactic Federation of Worlds, whose representatives first warned us of the dangers of agreements with the Orion and Draconian Extraterrestrial Alliance, and have played an important behind-the-scenes role in assisting humanity's great awakening. This has been Dr. Michael Salla with exopolitics.org. I want to announce my new book has just been released, Space Force, Our Star Trek Future. It's now available on Amazon, and you can order it from my website to get your own autographed copy. Also, I want to announce that on May 22nd, I'll be holding my next webinar. It's going to be on Antarctica, the Dark Fleet, and humanity's liberation. And I'll be giving an update on what's been happening in Antarctica and how it relates to the ongoing struggle to free humanity of this dark extraterrestrial influence and their agreements with a breakaway German faction with bases in Antarctica. Thank you for listening to my Exopolitics Today podcast.